It all started with a book launch party for my debut novel, Silent Shadows. It was meant to be a moment of triumph, a culmination of years of hard work. My wife, Lisa, was my biggest supporter, or so I thought. She had always been there, cheering me on, even through the rejections and the countless edits. But on that night under the bright lights, something felt off. Lisa was acting strangely. She was more animated than usual, laughing a little too loud at jokes that didn't land. I chalked it up to excitement. I mean, who wouldn't be thrilled at the launch of a long-awaited book? But as the night progressed, I noticed her glancing at my literary agent, Mark, just a bit too often. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I was hyper-aware of every little detail that night. I brushed off the nagging feeling in my gut, focusing instead on the guests and the congratulatory words. Friends and family surrounded me, and I was riding high on the adrenaline of success. But as I watched Lisa and Mark interact, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Days turned into weeks and the party became a distant memory, but the feeling lingered. Lisa's behavior began to change. She was often distracted, her phone glued to her hand. Late-night work meetings turned into late-night phone calls. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, but the little signs were stacking up like building blocks, creating a tower of doubt. Then, one evening, as I rummaged through our shared desk looking for a pen, I stumbled upon something that shattered my world. A series of flirty texts between Lisa and Mark. My heart raced as I read through the messages. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive, and the worst of all, last night was amazing." Each line felt like a dagger to my heart, twisting deeper with every word. I confronted her the moment she walked in. The fight that ensued was explosive. Lisa's face transformed from surprise to anger, and she quickly shifted to denial. "Those texts are just playful banter. It's nothing," she exclaimed, her voice rising. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. The denial, the blame, the lies pouring out of her mouth. I could see the way she tried to spin the narrative, refusing to take responsibility for her actions. As the confrontation unfolded, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger surged through me, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sadness. I had trusted her, believed in our partnership, and here she was, lying right to my face. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. I couldn't comprehend how someone I loved so deeply could treat me with such disregard. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events in my mind. I felt like a fool for believing in our fairy tale, for thinking that we were immune to the kind of heartbreak that I was now experiencing. The pain of betrayal has a way of stripping away the layers of self-worth, leaving one feeling exposed and vulnerable. I was in a dark place, oscillating between self-loathing and rage. But as dawn broke, a flicker of determination began to grow within me. I had a decision to make. I couldn't let this be the end of my story. Sure, the marriage was in tatters, but she had awakened something in me, a desire to reclaim my narrative. I would channel this betrayal into something powerful. I would write again, but this time, it would be my truth, my pain, and my journey of redemption. I decided not to hide from the truth, but to confront it head-on. Little did Lisa know, my story had just begun, and I would turn this heartache into a bestseller that needed no middleman. I was ready to dive deep into my feelings and craft a narrative that resonated with betrayal and resilience. The wheels were in motion. After confronting Lisa, the days felt like they dragged on in a haze, each one a painful reminder of what had happened. I knew that I couldn't let my anger consume me. I had to channel it into my writing. So I started drafting my next book, tentatively titled Betrayal's Echo. It became my therapy, my escape from the reality that had shattered around me. My laptop became my confidant, and every keystroke was a cathartic release. I poured my heart into the manuscript, crafting characters that mirrored my experiences, characters that felt betrayed, lost, and ultimately empowered by their pain. The plot thrived on the theme of redemption, reflecting not just my journey but the universal struggle of overcoming betrayal. It felt exhilarating to take control of my narrative, something I had felt stripped of after discovering Lisa's infidelity. As I began to write, I couldn't ignore how Lisa attempted to act like nothing had changed. She was still coming home late, still glued to her phone, and still filled with excuses that felt more like a slap in the face than explanations. Every time she smiled at me, I could see the cracks in her facade. It infuriated me, yet I found myself feeling almost detached, as if I were watching a bad movie unfold. There was no way to go back to the way things were. One evening, while I was deeply engrossed in writing, I heard her on the phone in the other room. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. "Mark, I'm telling you, he's being ridiculous. He's just trying to manipulate me because he's insecure about his writing," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. The way she spoke about me, it felt like an icy grip around my heart. I was no longer her partner, I was just an obstacle in her way. That night I couldn't restrain myself. I confronted her again. "I heard you." "On the phone, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but filled with the turmoil inside. "You think I'm insecure, you're the one who's been lying and cheating." Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, but she quickly masked it with indignation. "You're twisted. You're trying to make me feel responsible for your failures." She shot back, her voice rising. I started to realize that her ability to twist the narrative was her defense mechanism, a way to deflect her guilt onto me. It was infuriating. No matter how many times I called her out or expressed my feelings, she had an excuse ready, a lie prepared. She insisted that I was the one who had changed, that I had become too absorbed in my writing and neglected her needs. The irony was palpable, and I couldn't believe I was still trying to reason with someone who had completely derailed the trust we had built. It was at this moment that I knew I needed to take definitive action, not just in my writing but in my life. I decided to stop trying to salvage a sinking ship. I needed to focus on me. I put more energy into my book, immersing myself in each character's pain and finding out how they reclaimed their lives after betrayal. The writing became a sanctuary where I could explore my feelings without judgment. Each chapter became a confrontation with my own heartache, a way to lay bare the raw emotions that Lisa had stirred within me. I wrote about the anger, the sadness, the confusion, and even the moments of longing for the life we had built together. Still, the more I wrote, the more I realized that I was not just reclaiming my story. I was also gaining clarity about who I was and what I wanted. With every passing week, I felt more empowered. I began thinking about the next steps in my life beyond the book. I realized that I didn't want to be trapped in a toxic cycle any longer. I came to terms with the fact that I had the power to write my own ending, to redefine my own happiness. In those quiet moments alone, I began mapping out my future. I started contemplating self-publishing my book, using my experience to inspire others who might find themselves in similar situations. It became clear that I was not going to let Lisa's betrayal define me. Instead, I would turn it into a story of resilience and strength. The irony was striking. She had cheated with my literary agent, but now I would be the author of my destiny, using the very betrayal she had inflicted on me. I was ready to rise from the ashes of this relationship and build something new, something entirely mine. As I delved deeper into my writing, I felt as though I was regaining my sense of self. I didn't need Lisa, nor did I need anyone else to validate my worth. I was fierce, determined, and ready to face whatever came next. The story of my life was about to take a turn, and it was time to embrace it. With each passing day, I settled deeper into my writing routine. The manuscript for Betrayal's Echo began to take shape. Each chapter was steeped in raw emotion, a reflection of my journey through heartache. I wrote during late nights while the house was quiet, pouring my feelings onto the page without restraint. The story was my way of processing everything Lisa had done and everything I had felt. While I was focused on crafting my narrative, Lisa continued her charade. She acted as though nothing had changed between us, meticulously curating her interactions, seemingly desperate to convince both of us that we could return to normalcy. It was surreal to witness the lengths she would go to maintain the facade. She would come home with new clothes, smiling as if she hadn't been lying to me for weeks. I played along, but inside, I felt like a volcano ready to erupt. Eventually, I reached a critical point in my writing where I needed feedback. I had been sending drafts to a few close friends and fellow writers for their thoughts. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, which fueled my desire to keep pushing forward. I decided it was time to take my work to the next level. I researched self-publishing, learning about platforms, marketing strategies, and how to create a brand as an author. As I immersed myself in this new world, I started dreaming of the book's launch. One evening, as I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, Lisa walked in. The air felt thick with tension. I could sense she was about to say something, and I braced myself for the inevitable. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. I closed my laptop and looked at her. "About what? The lies, the betrayal, because I think we've already covered that." She sighed, visibly frustrated. "You're being unreasonable. Can't we just move past this? I've apologized." "Apologies mean nothing without change, Lisa," I replied, my tone steady. "You can't just act like everything is fine when you've shattered my trust. You think we can just wipe the slate clean and pretend this never happened?" She rolled her eyes, her irritation boiling over. "You're so dramatic. It was a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes." "Not like this," I shot back. "This isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal. You crossed a line I didn't think you were capable of crossing." The confrontation escalated, and soon we were shouting at each other in the kitchen. It was the first time I had really let my feelings out, and it felt both liberating and exhausting. But after the fight, the silence between us was deafening. Lisa stormed off to our bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That night I couldn't shake the conversations we'd had. I was torn. Part of me wanted to salvage what little we had left, but the other part was screaming that I deserved better. I went back to my manuscript, and as I wrote, I found myself pouring more of my pain onto the page. I created a character who experienced that same hopelessness, but ultimately found their strength and independence. Seeing my character grow and reclaim their life began to reflect my own journey. It was as if I was writing my own redemption arc. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't just want to tell a story. I needed to live it. I couldn't stay in a toxic environment that threatened to stifle my creativity and spirit. I started making plans in secret. I contacted self-publishing platforms and researched marketing strategies. I even reached out to potential cover designers. I was committed to bringing my book to life, and the thought of finally sharing my story kept me energized. I also began exploring ways to separate my finances from Lisa's, preparing for the reality that our marriage was likely over. Then came the day that changed everything. I was at a local coffee shop revising my manuscript when I happened to run into Mark, my literary agent and, as I now knew, Lisa's lover. He approached me with that charming smile of his, and I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. "Hey man, congratulations on the book. I'm really excited to see how it turns out." I couldn't contain myself any longer. "Excited? You should be. You've gotten your hands all over it, haven't you?" His expression shifted, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "Don't play coy with me, Mark. I know all about you and Lisa," I said, my voice low but charged with anger. The color drained from his face, and for a moment I savored the discomfort I saw in him. "That's not what you think. Save it. I'm done with both of you." I pushed past him, my heart racing. The confrontation had been cathartic, freeing me from the weight of my silence. I walked out of the coffee shop with a renewed sense of purpose. After that encounter, I felt a fire ignite within me. I was no longer the victim in this story, I was the author. I would write the ending on my own terms. I knew I had to take a stand, not just for myself, but also for my future. I began envisioning not just the book launch, but my life afterward, free from Lisa and all the complications she brought. As I returned home, I realized that the next steps were clear. I wouldn't just finish the book. I would prepare to confront Lisa one last time. It was time to end this chapter of my life and embrace the new story that was waiting to unfold. The atmosphere at home had grown increasingly tense, a taut wire ready to snap. I spent the next few days finalizing my manuscript, pouring every ounce of betrayal, heartache, and determination into those pages. I could feel the momentum building as I prepared for the official launch of Betrayal's Echo. It was no longer just a story. It was my declaration of independence, a testament to resilience, and I needed to share it with the world. But first, I had to confront Lisa. I knew I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. So I waited until we were both home one evening, the air thick with unspoken words. After dinner, I called her into the living room, bracing myself for what was to come. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked at me warily, her expression shifting to one of irritation. "What now? More accusations? I'm so tired of this." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "No more excuses, no more lies. I can't keep doing this. I deserve better than your half-hearted apologies and attempts to brush everything under the rug." Her eyes narrowed as she crossed her arms. "You're being unreasonable. I told you it was a mistake, one that I regret. I'm trying to move on here." "Move on? You think you can just erase what you did? You think we can go back to being a happy couple?" I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I fought to keep my tone calm. "We're not okay, and it's time I face that." Lisa rolled her eyes, her annoyance palpable. "Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Maybe, if you were more present, none of this would have happened." The audacity of her words struck me like a blow. "You're blaming me? Seriously, I was present for you, Lisa. I supported you, believed in you, and you chose to betray me with my literary agent. That's on you, not me." The room fell silent, the air crackling with tension. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she scrambled for a defense. "You know what? You're right. I messed up and I know I've hurt you, but I'm trying to be better. Can't we just talk about it like adults?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decision settle over me. "No, Lisa, we can't just talk our way out of this. I've given this relationship everything I had and you shattered it. It's time to face the truth." "What truth?" she asked, her voice rising. "That you're being dramatic, that you refuse to forgive me. This is ridiculous. The truth is that I deserve more than this. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. I don't see that from you anymore." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "So I've decided to file for separation. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about me reclaiming my life." Her face turned pale, and for a fleeting moment I saw real fear in her eyes. "You can't be serious. You're just going to throw everything away because I made a mistake." "Not just a mistake, Lisa, a betrayal, and I won't let it define me any longer," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm ready to move on, even if you're not." With that, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of liberation washing over me. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, and it felt empowering. Lisa's reaction, however, was not what I expected. She exploded in anger, hurling accusations and insults in my direction. "You're being selfish. You're ruining everything. You'll regret this," she spat. I stood my ground, refusing to let her words penetrate my newfound resolve. "Maybe I will, but I need to do this for myself. I can't keep living in a shadow of betrayal. I deserve to be happy, and I won't find that with you." After our confrontation, there was an eerie silence that blanketed the house. I felt as if I were living in a ghost town, haunted by memories that I was desperate to escape. I threw myself into my work, finalizing the manuscript for Betrayal's Echo. I scheduled a release date and began planning a launch event, envisioning the moment I would finally share my story with the world. In the midst of all this, I started to focus on my personal well-being. I reached out to friends and family, sharing the news of my separation. Their support was overwhelming, and I felt a renewed sense of connection in my life. I realized that I had been so isolated in my marriage, allowing Lisa's betrayal to cloud my judgment and limit my interactions. The launch day arrived faster than I anticipated, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. I had rented a small local bookstore for the event and organized a reading, where I would share excerpts from the book. As I prepared, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my moment, the culmination of all my hard work and pain. The night of the launch, the bookstore was packed with friends, acquaintances, and even a few strangers who had come to support local authors. As I stepped onto the small stage, I felt a rush of emotion. I looked out into the crowd, seeing familiar faces mixed with those who had come to hear my story. I started reading passages from Betrayal's Echo, my voice trembling at first but gaining strength as I continued. Each word was a release, each sentence a step closer to healing. The audience was captivated, hanging onto my every word as I recounted the journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. When I finished reading, the applause was thunderous. I felt overwhelmed by the support surrounding me. It was a surreal experience, standing in front of a crowd that was genuinely engaged with my story, celebrating my triumph over adversity. That night, as I packed up my things, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had turned my pain into something powerful, something impactful. I realized that moving forward meant embracing my journey, allowing myself to feel the sadness but also the strength that came with it. The separation from Lisa marked not just an end, but the beginning of a life that I could shape on my own terms. I had come through the storm, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I was finally free. The buzz from the book launch lingered long after the event had ended. I received countless messages from friends and readers, all praising my writing and sharing their own experiences with betrayal and resilience. It felt incredible to connect with others who had faced similar hardships, and I was reminded of the therapeutic power of storytelling. As people began to purchase Betrayal's Echo, I noticed the sales steadily rising. It became clear that my story resonated with many, and this only fueled my determination to continue writing. I began working on marketing strategies, reaching out to local bookstores to set up signings, and sharing my journey on social media. The newfound purpose in my life was exhilarating, and I felt as though I was reclaiming not only my voice but also my identity. While I was riding high on my success, Lisa was still a presence in my life. Despite the separation, she tried to maintain contact, sending me texts that ranged from heartfelt apologies to angry tirades. I realized she was struggling to accept the reality of our situation. One evening, she sent a particularly emotional message. "I'm so sorry for everything. I miss us. Can't we at least talk?" I debated for a moment, torn between the memories we had shared and the reality of our relationship. But I quickly reminded myself of the pain she had caused. I responded with a simple, "I think it's best if we don't talk." Her anger flared again, leading to more accusations. "You'll regret this. You're throwing everything away for a silly book." In that moment, I felt a wave of strength wash over me. I had to remind myself that I was no longer that person who would accept her manipulation. I had taken my pain and turned it into something beautiful, a story that not only healed me but also spoke to others. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my writing and building my platform. I started receiving invitations to speak at local events, sharing my journey and discussing the themes of my book. With every engagement, I grew more confident. I was no longer that anxious, betrayed husband. I was a passionate author, eager to connect with others. One day, while attending a local author event, I met a group of writers who shared similar experiences. We formed a small support network, and it felt refreshing to be surrounded by individuals who understood the complexities of life, love, and betrayal. We would often meet to share ideas, critique each other's work, and motivate one another to keep pushing forward. As I forged new friendships, I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had neglected during my marriage. I found joy in exploring my hobbies again, going to the gym, hiking, trying new restaurants, and even dating casually. It was liberating to reclaim my life, to step outside of the shadow of my past. But I couldn't ignore the fact that Lisa was still hanging on to the remnants of our relationship. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my apartment. I could feel my heart race, a mix of surprise and apprehension. I opened the door, and there she stood, looking vulnerable and defeated. "Can we please talk?" she pleaded, her voice soft. I hesitated but felt a strange sense of compassion. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but another part recognized that this might be the closure we both needed. "Fine, but only." For a moment, I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We sat down in silence for a moment, the tension palpable. Finally, I broke the ice. "What do you want, Lisa?" I miss you. I miss us," she said, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I know I messed up and I can't take it back, but I thought we could try to work things out. Maybe I could prove to you that I've changed." I could see the desperation in her eyes, but I also felt a surge of anger bubbling beneath the surface. You think you can just come back into my life because you miss it? You shattered my trust, Lisa. It doesn't work that way. Her expression shifted from sadness to defensiveness. I was wrong, I was stupid and selfish, but can't we at least try? I'll do anything. I shook my head, feeling the weight of our history pressing down on me. No, Lisa, you had your chance and you threw it away. I've spent months rebuilding my life. I've found my voice again, and I'm not going to let you derail me. I deserve someone who values me and respects our relationship. The tears rolled down her cheeks, and I felt a pang of empathy, but I knew that I had to stand firm. This is it for us, Lisa. I'm moving forward, and you need to do the same. I could see her processing my words, and I hoped she would understand. I was ready to embrace a new chapter in my life, one where I could thrive independently. As she left, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I had said what I needed to say, and I felt a sense of closure wash over me. It was the final act of letting go, the last remnants of a relationship that had become toxic. Now, I could finally focus on the future, on what I wanted to create and who I wanted to become. I had a new life waiting ahead of me, and I was ready to embrace it fully. I had turned my pain into purpose, and the journey had just begun. With Lisa gone, I felt an unusual sense of peace settle over me. The chaos that had consumed my life for months began to dissipate, replaced by clarity and focus. I was finally ready to dive headfirst into this new chapter, embracing the possibilities that awaited me. In the weeks that followed, Betrayal's echo continued to gain traction. I was receiving invitations to participate in book clubs and panel discussions, and my social media presence began to grow. I found myself engaged with readers who shared their own stories of betrayal and resilience, and I felt a strong sense of community form around my work. Writing had transformed from a solitary act into a shared experience, which fueled my passion even more. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email from a literary magazine asking if I would be interested in writing an article about my experience with betrayal and the process of turning that pain into a book. The invitation felt surreal, and I knew that this was an opportunity to further connect with others while sharing my journey. I agreed, excited to divulge the lessons I had learned along the way. As I poured my heart into the article, I reflected on my emotional journey. I had gone from a place of profound hurt to one of empowerment, using my experiences to fuel my creativity. I wrote about the importance of self-worth and the strength that comes from confronting one's truth. I detailed how embracing vulnerability can lead to growth and healing. When the article was published, the response was overwhelming. Readers flooded my inbox with messages of gratitude for my honesty and vulnerability. Many shared their stories, reminding me that I wasn't alone in my journey. This outpouring of support reinforced my belief in the power of storytelling. As spring turned into summer, I decided to host a book signing event at a local community center. I wanted to create a space where people could come together to share their stories and experiences. I envisioned it as a celebration of resilience, a gathering of individuals who had faced their own battles and emerged stronger. On the day of the event, I was nervous but excited. I set up a small table with copies of my book, decorations, and a sign inviting attendees to share their own stories if they felt comfortable. As the doors opened, the community flowed in, and I was immediately surrounded by friendly faces, eager to engage. The event turned into a beautiful exchange of experiences. I listened to stories of heartache and healing, of love lost and new beginnings. It filled me with hope and inspiration, and I found joy in connecting with each person who shared their journey. Amid the crowd, I spotted someone I hadn't expected, a woman named Sarah, a fellow writer I had met at a workshop a few months prior. She approached me with a warm smile, and we quickly struck up a conversation. It was refreshing to connect with someone who shared my passion for writing and understood the power of storytelling. As the day unfolded, Sarah and I found ourselves gravitating toward each other, laughing and sharing our respective journeys. We both understood the weight of betrayal, but also the thrill of reclaiming one's life through writing. After the event, Sarah and I exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. I felt an undeniable connection with her, and it was nice to think that I could start to open my heart again, even if tentatively. In the months that followed, Sarah and I began dating. She was supportive of my writing endeavors, and I admired her dedication to her own craft. Our connection deepened, and I found joy in being able to share my passion with someone who understood the importance of storytelling and vulnerability. As I reflected on my journey, it became increasingly clear that the betrayal I had faced was not the end of my story, but rather the catalyst for a new beginning. Betrayal's echo had not only allowed me to heal, but had also opened the door to new relationships, opportunities, and a deeper understanding of myself. I learned that it's okay to feel pain. It's okay to grieve what was lost. But I also discovered that resilience is born from that pain, and it's through confronting our truths that we can rise. I had transformed my hurt into art, and that art had inspired connections that I never thought possible. As I sat at my desk, typing away on my next project, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the twists and turns life had taken. I had come full circle, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to navigate it. In the end, I learned that betrayal might hurt, but it can also be the impetus for transformation, a reminder that we have the power to write our own stories and redefine our lives. I was no longer just a husband betrayed. I was an author, a storyteller, and a man who had reclaimed his narrative. The future was bright, and I was ready to step into it, pen in hand.